essentially we'll pick up with you following back a nameless student, of the university. He's huffing and puffing. He won't really give you the details about what's going on, but he will. But he does say that your parents need you back there, and he actually, instead of guiding you to your quarters or the parents' quarters, you begin quickly realizing, and you don't need to roll perception for this, that he's guiding you to the offices of Professor Alvin Gaffey. Alvin Gaffey is a professor that has been at the university since there was a university. He's the first professor that your parents hired on once they once they sort of put this place together. He had taught your parents when they are young. He is an elder goblin. His name isn't actually Alvin Gaffey, but it sounds like Alvin Gaffey, and he's gone by it for so long now he barely remembers it himself. So, fond memories of Alvin. He is an extremely friendly, congenial old goblin man. He is nearsighted with spectacles, and he is most often standing on a stepladder, writing out mathematics equations on a chalkboard, trying to explain the physical properties that are the physical sciences that are the guideline for managing magical spells. That's his focus. That's his entire life, is trying to get a better grasp of how magic works within the function of the natural processes of the universe. Because even if it's a defiance, there must be some sort of system that allows it to defy the other normative system. So that's his life. It's not a very popular field of research. Doesn't really have jobs. Nobody likes.
I'm sure Patience finds it incredibly fascinating, though.
It is incredibly fascinating research on an intellectualist level. It has no application whatsoever.
No application.
It's the kind of thing that maybe if he ever were to get a breakthrough, would absolutely have application. So when you get led to this, it's a bit confusing, but more importantly, when you open the door, 99 out of 100 times, you'd see him on that stepladder, on that chalkboard if it was during the day. Maybe some food forgotten on the corner of his desk as he continues to work out equations. Maybe a book in his hand. Well, he's still got his hand on the chalkboard, standing up there, refusing to leave the function of trying to unravel this, but instead, his office is tidy, it's neat. There are 4 chairs in it, 2 of which are occupied by your parents, 1 of which is occupied by David, and it is not, behind his desk is not just Alvin, but several of the other professors as well. And when the door is open, Alvin just simply smiles politely and waves for you to come in. It's like, come in, Patience.
Hi, everyone. Alvin. Mom, Dad.
Your mom and dad freshly cleaned off their tiefling face to be here. No,
Oh my god. Parents, it's really not comfortable.
It's not good. No, we're dressing as specific tieflings. It's not racist if we're dressing as specific. No, I'm just kidding. They're sitting there kind of, they nod to you, but they're relatively polite. David kind of mildly smiles. Roll perception. Okay. Or history, if you want to roll history.
Oh, it's always going to be history, especially over perception. History is a +5, my friend, but perception's a -2. I rolled a 10, so that's only a 15.
That's a 15. That's good enough for this. You've recognized this. This is when somebody needs to be penalized in the university. This is when the university decides to take in-house problems rather than report them. Usually it's academic related. Sometimes it's like property damage or like a way to resolve conflicts between students. But it's always a board of randomly chosen professors, with the exception of Alvin, who's always sort of like the lead sort of judge is the wrong word, moderator almost in this case. And then And then they seat and people explain themselves, they ask questions, and you've been invited to sit down beside your family and David in front of this group at the university.
So we're basically the ones in front of, we're the ones being judged.
You get
my
that
parents,
with the 15,
David, and
you get that idea, yeah. That your parents and David and yourself are potentially all being judged, though for what as a group is not yet necessarily clear.
So Patience walks in and is kind of dusting off some of the dust from the trail and from the fighting, and hopefully doesn't have any blood on herself. She worries that for just a second that she might have blood on her dress. She sits down. Did I miss the memo? Is there something the matter?
Alvin cuts your parents off before they can talk or say anything. And he's like, Miss Pratt, we are here to discuss something. Your parents are here on behalf of David. We have had some very troubling news recently that we have tried to explain outside of the most logical or the simplest explanations, but we've not been able to do it.
All right.
Miss Pratt, you have been called as a witness because there is one of two explanations we have come to. David swears by one. However, your parents have done an adept's job at explaining how it was very unlikely, due to what was discovered, that David could have done the things we think he did, which led us to you. Miss Pratt, this is a discussion about last night, maybe the night before last. There was an altercation, and a number of bodies have been discovered. There was an altercation reported in the library, though no one visibly saw it. They heard a lot of noise and ruckus all the way out to the hall, and then a groundskeeper discovered that some dirt had been disturbed, and that upon digging into it, found fairly deep down a number of bodies. And when we looked at the log, and when it was there, we saw that, of course, as usual, David was working, and we went to question him, and he simply openly admitted that he and some of his kin had stopped some burglars by brutally murdering them in the library, and that was the situation, that he would, was planning to report it, but got busy. He's very excited for a date with someone that's coming up. It's unclear. But once your parents caught wind of this, they came in and they're like, no, we need to investigate the truth in the matter of all things, and it's led us to you. It appears that some things have happened. So we'd like to hear where you were I think it was last night as a DM. It
would have been last night.
Yeah,
because it was before the Good Hammer Manor.
Yeah.
And that was all the same night. So Patience kind of goes, I was in the library that night when it happened, when the villains burst in and attempted to attack me and my compatriots.
Mm-hmm.
David and his kin did not kill these people. The group I have been with in the last few days are largely mercenaries, and in a strange turn of events, they attracted the attention of Mr. Goodhammer, who, of course, as you know, has taken control of a part of our land and has been harassing us fiercely.
Mm-hmm.
And I continue to associate with these people because I wanted us to be able to no longer be under the thumb of Mr. Goodhammer. However, Mr. Goodhammer saw that this was occurring and came to the library, sent his goons to the library to try to rough us up. And to protect the people here, myself and this group attacked those people back and defending of life and limb of those here at the university and our own lives. So it was this group that killed these goons. And because we feared that if the law got involved, that the university's situation would be tarnished, and that we might lose the rest of our land, I asked David to cover for us.
So, roll persuasion with advantage, because you did not lie at all in any of that, and I was listening for it.
Yep, so that's so first one is 16 plus 4, which would be a 20.
Dirty 20.
And the second one is a 9. It's not even worth talking about.
Dirty 20 is pretty good, though. So
pretty good.
So Alvin looks, and he's like, and you can hear some murmuring from the other professors on the council, all of which you know, but none of which you know nearly as well as Alvin. They look, and they're like, Alvin follows up, was there no possible situation where a non-violent conclusion could have come to this, or resolution could have come between you and these ruffians? Were they really there simply to target you and do you harm? Was it really just self-defense?
You would have noticed probably with those bodies a number of hounds, weapons. They were purely there to cause destruction to our lives and our livelihood.
And why did you not bring this news to your parents or the faculty the following morning? Or later that same night?
There is something terrible going on in our town that I have been pulled into, and it is time sensitive. I promised that I was going to bring this to the council and to my parents, but I purely lacked the time. Unfortunately, these goons are but a symptom of a larger problem of what actually Goodhammer was trying to stop.
He thinks about it. He's like, and he goes, Wasn't it the Goodhammer Manor that was burned? Wasn't he just found this morning, burned in his own manor? What was he trying to stop? What is all this time-sensitive issue stuff? In order to expedite this, so that we make our appropriate call time, do you? You can kind of meta explain this to me. Yeah. Do you explain all of it? Do you explain some of it?
I think what Patience will probably largely explain is like the crux of the matter. I'm trying to think. I think that she probably would reveal that Goodhammer was a fae, but I think that the lighting on fire of the place, she would probably say that the fire they set outside got out of control, and that it was not lit on purpose. Is probably like the big lie that she tells. Okay. But the rest of it, I think she talks about like
pretty honest and frank about the details they would need to know relevant to the summoning.
Yeah, as good as Patience is at lying, she hates it, and she does believe that the people of the school would do their best to help them. She fully trusts the people there, whether that's the right thing or not.
Well, let's see if her faith is rewarded. Roll deception, but with advantage, because you've been fairly frank in general, and you're only lying. You're only doing kind of like a half lie on it. Related to the fire going out of control, because you admitted that you lit a fire. It's just not the second fire. So.
Yep. But the fire was, to make sure that we didn't have that, fewer people died.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well that first one's not great. So that's an 8 plus a 4. That's a 12. And the second one is better. That's a 13 plus a 4. That's 17.
All right, I'm rolling insight for Alvin. I'm using his stats that I have for him as the general. to let you know what he has is a +3 to insight. And so you said you got a 17.
Yes.
So I am basically treating this as a contested roll. If I get a 14 or higher on the dice, he will know that something is up. Anything below that, he will just believe you. And that's a natural 5. Alwyn's like, yes. Well, this is all very concerning. Have you been looking at your parents at all this entire time, or David? You've been glancing over to them?
Yes, because I think it would look unnatural if she just like stared straight ahead and refused to look at them. So I think like as she explained, she like says like this thing and and this thing. She's very charismatic, so she's one of those people who can actually like when she's not going like the history. She is a pretty good talker.
Full anime fingers.
She runs to class with a piece of toast in her mouth.
Yeah. Roll perception on your parents. Just regular perception.
Okay. Which I'm so good at. 13.
All right. You're good enough to understand this. When you talked about the violence, your parents were out and out horrified. Your father especially was just horrified, and that tracks with the kind of people that they are. They are learned, educated people who always feel like there's a way. That's how they've been approaching the whole good hammer thing, is very like methodically and logically, and then trying to do the best that they can, but they never would have considered, getting into a fight with good hammer or trying to set him up for anything. And then as you discuss the fire and the discussion, that horrifiedness kind of settles into a sort of general thin-lipped look of disappointment. You do happen to catch that David is desperately trying to hide a smirk about the fire situation, because
fuck you, David.
Because David is 100% pro D&D shenanigans. Star
makes such a couple.
David's had a life. However, as Alvin hears all of this, and as he hears what you are telling him, which takes much longer than your and my interaction here, and asks a couple clarifying questions that you don't have to lie on, he nods and he's like, yes. So, what we have as a concern then is that we have a person. Did you tell them about the land property ownership recovery? The deed recoveries?
Yes.
This is going to be a complicated thing. I think we're going to need to deliberate about this. While we do so, we would appreciate it if you and David would remain here while we maybe have a bit of a lunch. We'll get you some lunch too. We'll have a bit of a lunch and we'll discuss this. And within the next hour or two, we will come back to you with our decision on how we need to proceed as an organization. And you can see that your father almost speaks up, and Alvin just holds up his hand and he's like, you'll be included in the discussion about the deliberation. Obviously, we can discuss how you might think would be appropriate with David, but you're compromised when it comes to your wonderful daughter. I bear to say I'm nearly compromised in that. So I will, of course, be allowing the other professors to take the lead on that. Yes, so if you will just remain here for the next 2 hours or so, we will come back to you with our decision on how we feel is appropriate for the university to move forward, and also further questions on this summoning situation to see how we might be of service in it, if at all possible. And
does that line up with the amount of time that everyone else spent?
So you don't know that, and you do know, I know, but I'm just
curious.
You do know that they plan to go to Lisley Clanthian after they plan to go to the inspector. And so there would be a part of Patience that's like, they're going to go talk to a powerful, you don't know the details on him.
Probably pissed.
Yeah, and
might
everything.
Try to end them.
You're like, they, much like this entire last couple days has been, there's no time to fuck around.
Yeah.
And so that is your impetus. So the last question I ask of you before we go switch over to the actual session is, does Patience stay there for 2 hours, or does Patience try and leave?
I think Patience, as soon as they go from 1 hour to 2 hours, she's like, I cannot stay 2 hours. That is, with the level of danger that this town is under, I cannot. I simply cannot. And all I can ask is that you trust that I will return this evening. I will. All my life is here. I will not flee town. Whatever your judgment of me, I will accept. But I cannot stay.
Paige, your father and your mother, actually, at this point, gets visibly upset and is just says, can't you just once hold on and do something on someone else's goddamn timeline, daughter? And only stops saying real words as your father kind of puts a hand on her hand. She pulls it away at first, but then settles it down. And Alvin's like, I'm sorry, I stated that as a request, but it is actually a mandate. Roll Arcana.
19.
You immediately sense, as you can hear it being muttered from a professor, that somebody has put a kind of a containment, not a hold person spell on you, but a containment field around the room. And you instantly know that they've boxed you and David into this room without you doing something like dispel magic or trying to manipulate things. So there's a bit of discussion there, but they essentially leave the room. And Alvin kind of gives you a bit of a sad look on the way out. He's like a concerned sad look.
Getting used to those.
And your parents don't even look back at you when they leave. They're very frustrated with this. And you're now left in the room alone with David. And David just finally breaks to a full smile, and he's like, "You all burned down Goodhammer's place."
I did not. I would not have, if anything, because there's like a whole secret room full of all sorts of like books, and like it is wrong.
I understand, but I get it. When there's a bit of combat, people get like a little bit too excited about it. Here's the deal. Do you really need to go, Patience?
Yes, I wouldn't have asked for it if I didn't have to.
How much trouble are you willing to get into?
Well, if it means the town isn't chewed up by a giant evil purging worm, then I would take it.
He nods, pulls a small sending stone from his pocket, and he's like, all right, open it up. And then you see suddenly there's a small little door behind the professor's desk that opens up, and two of David's buddies are like right there. Two of David's family, friends, kin. It's real unclear, but
Clones.
They look a lot like him.
Pod gnomes.
And they're all like, David's like, I'll stay here. I'll explain that I'll be honest with them. I'll explain that I made the decision at the time to let you out.
I can't let you do that after trying to take the blame and getting stuck in all this.
What are they going to do to me? They're going to find someone else that's willing to work 60 hours in the library? I don't think so. I'll be fine. you head out. Whatever's brewing needs to get dealt with, and whether it's you or someone else, if it's you or someone else, I'd rather it be you. So head on. I saw what y'all can do. Head on out.
Thank you, David. And she picks up her bag and puts her hat back on.
Right before you leave, roll one last insight check.
Okay. That is not much. That is a 6. I was gonna say one more thing.
Okay, go for it.
If they do fire you and make me do 60 hours a week in the library, I'm sorry. I would not be surprised if they chained me to the desk after this.
He just laughs and he's like, yeah, and you'd slip that chain in a heartbeat. Go ahead. And everything. And you discover that David and his gnome buddies, you have to kind of crouch down because you're not super tall, but you're taller than gnomes, obviously.
I'm basically a tiny infant compared to the rest of the group, but quite tall.
You're quite tall.
For a gnome.
You have to really slouch down. And you discover now that there is a series of small hallways that are roughly about 4 to 4.5 feet tall through a lot of this university that you did not know about that seem like they're fairly fresh, within the last 10 years or so. So it's probably David's doing. It's a little unclear why that's the case, and it's something to think about for later. But for now, you have to get back to the group.
She's just kind of does he really spend 60 hours at the library, or do they spend 60 hours at the library?
It's a little unclear.
Yeah, okay.
But, and so that wraps up what you were doing while people were away. I will introduce you appropriately timed for maximum hilarity effect when we do this next episode here. So thank you very much. Thank you for everyone that's watched this little half episode. This is only on the YouTube. These little one-off episodes only go to YouTube, where you can discover what happens to people when they don't show up for the campaign as live players. So make sure to subscribe at Dying of Exposure on Twitter and Facebook. Subscribe to YouTube and follow us Twitch, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time every Tuesday night for new episodes of Through the Mill live stream. Thank you very much.
See y'all there.
Okay.